I've had a few people ask me about the NAR lawsuit, what it means going forward, because there's a lot of confusing stuff about it. So I wanted to clear that up. By the way, I'm not involved in the suit at all. I'm a real estate agent, so it does affect me, but I am not directly involved in the case. I am essentially a layman, but I'm going to tell you what I understand about the case from having listened to several podcasts, having read all the articles that have come out about the case, and heard from people who were actually reading the files on the case, and give you an idea of what to expect from this settlement, what it means for you. This is obviously more geared toward you being a real estate agent or someone else in the industry. If you're just a regular person watching this, yeah, you're welcome to it. But this message is going to be more geared for what does it mean as a real estate agent. The suit itself can be summarized as you had some sellers who were upset that NAR's rules made them pay more in fees than they thought they should have when they sold their homes. So this created the lawsuit. The sellers didn't like how NAR had rules set up in the MLS about how much money the sellers and buyer agents got paid. Well, at least in the MLS, you've got the buy side. You can specify how much they're getting paid. And so they thought that this setup could make the costs higher for everyone. So that's one of the things that the jury looked at was, is this situation fair? Is the way that both seller agents and buyer agents, the ways that they get paid, both directly from the seller typically, is that system fair? So you had First to Settle was Anywhere, and then you had Remax after that. And obviously, settling is not necessarily admitting guilt. It's just they don't want to be in the lawsuit. And then Keller Williams stayed in and fought for a little bit, and they finally settled. NAR finally settled. Aside from the 418 million or however much it was that they settled for, that's a different story as to I know I have a neighbor who is involved in the settlement itself to actually get money from the settlement for having sold their home in a certain time period. So I don't know how exactly that's going to go, how much money everybody stands to make. Yeah, I had read an article that said between I think 50 and 60 million anticipated affected homeowners who could be involved in the suit. So if there's supposed to be between 50 and 60 million affected homeowners who sold between a certain time range who could get money back, and there's $418 million to play with, assuming that there's nothing getting paid out of that to anybody, lawyers. Uh, so if you were to take that whole 418 million, how much money would each of those 60 million homeowners get back? $7. Pay up. So one big thing that's changing as a result of the settlement, other than the money, is the MLS. In the MLS, starting July is when these changes will take effect. You will no longer be allowed to list a compensation for a buyer agent. There won't be even a field for it to do that. So it is eliminating the advertisement of a paid commission or any payment toward a buyer agent. That is not to say that you can't pay one. It's just to say that you can't advertise it. Now, it's a bit unclear to me as to can you still advertise it on other websites? Can you advertise it on your broker website? Could you put it on Zillow? Or is it, because you're a member of the MLS, if you can't advertise it there, you can't advertise it anywhere. So then does it become, oh, well, then the buyer agent has to call you and then you can tell them over the phone, yes, I'll pay, or the seller will pay a buyer agent or is willing to offer a buyer agent, X number of dollars or X percent of commission. Could work that way. The intent of the lawsuit was really a decoupling of the both commissions getting paid by the seller. So now pushing or putting the impetus on the buyer to pay for their own agent if they want one. If they want a buyer agent, they're going to be encouraged, not forced, but they're going to be encouraged at this point to pay their own because the seller is going to be encouraged to not be feel that they have to pay a buyer agent in order to sell their house. That was the whole point of this lawsuit. So here we are. Here are the results of that. You can complain about it if you like, but I'm the type of person who would rather adapt to the change. There's nothing it's done. It's already done. Just you go with the flow. Here are the new rules. This is what we have to look forward to. It's like when we had radon changes and we made those changes right in the middle of the year. We didn't wait for the next year for the new contracts, did we? It's going to be the same with this. Come July, that field's not going to be on there. And I don't know that there's really anything to change within the contract to buy and sell other than if you're wanting to get paid as the buyer's agent, you'd probably write in the contract, like you would with a for sale by owner. Buyer is asking that the seller pay X number of dollars or X% of uh, commission to buyer agent from seller proceeds, something like that. And it's not going to be a difficult thing to transition to. It's just going to be a new set of rules that you have to follow. It's just, oh, just do this instead. And there's going to be classes on it as soon as this really gets hammered out on, okay, what does this look like exactly? Because it's all talk right now. It's still speculation, even though it's March and the rules take effect in July. Over the next few months, you're going to see that solidify into what does this realistically look like? What can we do and not do as real estate agents and brokers to follow the law? So starting July, that's what you get to look forward to. As the listing agent, when you're talking to a seller, you are going to have that conversation of, do you want to offer a compensation to a buyer agent? Should a buyer agent be there? And if so, how much do you want to pay? And previously, as a real estate agent, you might, if they were to question you on what percentage or dollar amount that you would recommend offering, and you would say, well, I would say, okay, well, this is typically what I see being offered to a buyer agent. If you were to offer less, you might lose the incentive for a buyer agent to want to show your property. That's not necessarily true because most of the buyers that I work with are looking online. They're looking on Zillow and all these different websites to find property. I'm not the person to procure or show them a property of, oh, wow, I never would have found this property if Kevin hadn't shown it to me. They're finding them. It's once in a while that somebody actually is expecting me to look for the stuff for them because they don't have the time to do it or interest to do it. Just show me something. If I'm interested, I'll look at it. Those type of people. So most clients, though, will just find it and show it to you. And what do you think? Is this still available? What do you think? And then you find the info, right? So that was part of the lawsuit was, okay, is there a collusion then if you're not offering a certain percentage that a buyer agent isn't going to show that property? They're just going to conveniently leave that out. And the argument on the other side, one of them was, you can't hide properties when you're showing stuff or when you've got somebody on a search. You can't just like, oh, I'm going to select the field that says that I'm not going to send properties to them that are below this, is offering to the buyer's agent. You can't do that. Maybe you could do that. I never did that. But you can't get away with that because the buyer is going to see it on Zillow anyway. What about this property? Why didn't you show me this one? It fell within all my, things that I wanted. So, just me personally, I've showed them all. Like, I see the percentage, like sometimes before, sometimes after, and I'm like, oh, okay. And that's what they're offering. Okay, that's what they're offering. But the problem was that there was the potential for an agent to do that and for an unsuspecting buyer to go along with it and not see a property that they would have otherwise wanted to see. So really this lawsuit was just about transparency and accountability. And in this particular way, being able to have that transparency with the consumer of this is how much your agent is getting paid on this property and no longer are you going to automatically have an agent's cost, your agent's cost covered for you by the seller. You may be liable for that. And what does that look like? So that's another thing that's up in the air because what does that look like? Is that out of pocket? If that's out of pocket, like 80% of your buyer pool can't buy a house anymore because they can't, at least they can't work with an agent, can't work with a buyer's agent because they can't afford that. So how else is that happening? And so that discussion's been had many times over. I'm sure you've heard it. Oh, well, just add it into the buyer's loan. So just have the lender finance the commission. Well, A, they are not doing that now, and it takes a long time. It's a very slow process for financial law to change. And so if that were something that was going to happen, it would not be happening quickly. It would take a while for that to happen if that got approved in the first place. So, yes, that is a possibility. And you could argue very easily that the buyer is already funding their own agent's commission. They're funding both agents' commission because they're paying for the property, the purchase price of the property has both agent commissions coming out of it. So it's like they're funding those two commissions too, right? So it's really easy argument to make that they're already doing it. It's just a different way that the buyer is paying for their own agent's commissions as opposed to rolling it in the loan, which they were doing before. Now they're potentially going to be rolling it in the loan more obviously after July. Again, if that were to happen, that's financial law. That's going to be slow to change. The other more likely thing is what is just very easily available to do within the contract itself, which is to ask when you write your offer as the buyer, ask the seller to pay for the buyer's agent. But I mean, it was already assumed at this point, generally in the market that that was going to happen. But now that we're trying to remove that assumption through a lawsuit, we're trying to remove that assumption. So now, if a seller still is okay with that model and paying both commissions, then you'll just write it into the contract that way, and it'll be a seller concession, essentially, to pay that other agent. It's going to come out of the seller's proceeds to pay their own agent, the listing agent, and now to pay a buyer agent is also going to come out of their proceeds. So it's not going to change anything as far as the way that everybody gets paid. It just changes how it gets written. But obviously, that is not the intent of the lawsuit. The intent was to decouple that so that a seller does not feel pressured to pay a buyer agent. And if they are willing to pay a buyer agent, that they do not feel pressured to pay a certain amount to one. So now as the buyer agent, you want to get paid. So now you got to start in the buyer. That was one of the other things that apparently changed in the settlement was to say that now as a buyer agent, you are required to have a buyer agency agreement signed between you and your buyer client. Well, like no duh. Like I've been doing that for 8 years and I'm in the state of Colorado. Like that's been a law. There's been a law here the whole time. Like, where was the rest of the nation? Are you not guys not doing this in other states? Have a buyer agency agreement. CYA, cover your ass. What are you doing? So just to have that to be a part of the settlement, I was just taken aback. Like, who isn't doing that? Who is not getting a signed buyer agency agreement? So get it done. To come back to transparency, that was the point of decoupling the fees, was to make it more obvious how much each agent is getting paid as opposed to just being a cloud, unclear as to, okay, I'm paying 6%, and that's the number. Let's use that. That's the number everybody's saying. I'm paying 6% to, both agents, and it's unclear to some people whether that's 6% to each or it's 6% total and it gets split. Because again, that is not clear to everybody that how the buyer agent is getting paid. So this is going to make it more clear by incentivizing or let's say disincentivizing the seller from paying a buyer's agent. So now you, as a real estate agent, have to talk to your clients more than you already do and say, hey, this is how I'm getting paid. This is what I'm expected to be paid, or this is what I like to be paid. This is what I'm charging. And then you negotiate that potentially after, right? So now, as the buyer agent, you're going to do that. As the listing agent, you'd negotiate that and say, "Hey, this is what I charge. This percentage goes to the buyer agent. This percentage goes to me. And if they want to negotiate that, yeah." Uh, but now, as the buyer agent, you get to do that. So now the buyer says, "Okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna potentially be on the hook for paying my own agent. So if you can get the listing agent to cover it or the seller to cover it, great. If not, um." what do you want to charge? And you say, okay, this is what I want to charge. This is what I'm charging. And they say, well, would you be okay with this? And do that negotiation. You get to do that as the buyer agent now, where you didn't really get to do that before. I mean, you could and say, okay, I'll give you a rebate at closing, because I'm listing your house and helping you buy a house. Maybe you give them a discount or something like that, on the next property. But otherwise, for the most part, you weren't doing that. You weren't negotiating your fee. If it was less than what you wanted, you might, let's say you wanted 3% as a buyer agent, and this listing's offering 2.5%. And so you go to your buyer and say, okay, I'm going to need a 0.5% from you. So I'm going to need this X amount of, whatever that is from you. And some agents do that. Some agents don't, and they just take what's on the table. But you've got that option to do that. So now, after this lawsuit, you're going to have more opportunity to have those pricing or compensatory conversations with your client. So that's a big part of the frenzy or the paranoia drama that you see on a lot of the headlines right now regarding the real estate settlement. And, oh, 6% commissions are going away. Buyer commissions are going away. Buyer agents aren't getting paid anymore. There's not going to be a buyer agent anymore. You want to switch over to listings. Well, like, no, duh. You wanted to switch over to listings. Like, I've known that. Like, as Ricky Carruth says, and if you're not following Ricky Carruth, go find him online. He's a real estate coach and he's like free. He's on social media. But as he says regularly to people that call in for like coaching, and he like makes it public so you can listen to it. Um, he says, "Would you rather have 30 listings or 30 buyers?" Well, like, duh, yeah, you'd rather have 30 listings because each buyer you're showing them like 5 houses a day, and you're showing them houses on nights and weekends. Like, you don't have to do that as a listing agent, obviously. It's so much less taxing and so much less grunt work. That's why when you joined a team, you were only allowed to do buyers, and then your team lead would do the listings, right? Because screw you, you're not getting those listings. Oh, it's so hard. It's so much more difficult being a listing agent. No, it's not. Just read your scripts. But that's why it was set up that way, because it was easier, because they wanted you doing the grunt work. So yes, obviously you'd rather have 30 listings over 30 buyers. But now with the settlement having taken place and now some results of that being here, that's on the table of, okay, is there going to be are buyer agents now going to compete for clients? So are we now going to see, and instead of listings, we'd see, okay, well, I'll do it for this percent. Okay, well, I'll sell your house for 6%, let's say. And go three to listing agent, three to buyer, and your seller says, well, Joe Blow came by yesterday and did, well, shame on you for not getting your listing presentation in before Joe Blow. Keep that in mind. But secondly, Joe Blow came in yesterday to do, the thing, and he said he'd do it for 5% total. Okay, great. And then you decide, like, do you want to beat out Joe, or do you want to showcase more value and see if you can win your client over the potential, seller over that way? So now, as the buyer agent, are you going to have to do that and say, okay, you just show up, you showed up on a Zillow lead or something, I'm going to show them this house. You never worked with them before. You're trying to like get to know them and that type of stuff. Not ideal, but if you got a warm lead, somebody that you already know, even better. But regardless, you're showing them houses and they talk about compensation of, we're not sure who we want to work with yet as a buyer agent. We've talked to two other agents. and you get out of them that, okay, these other agents are willing to work with us for this percentage of commission as a buyer's agent. And again, seek it from the seller, but get it from the buyer if you can't. That's kind of how I'm envisioning this to go now, is it's a bit more optional now as seller to pay the buyer agent. So now get it from the buyer if you can. So if the buyer can't pay, it doesn't have a lot of money out of pocket and doesn't have any other options like having the seller pay it, and financing won't take care of it. And here's the other thing about the financing aspect of it is that, okay, even if the financing rules change to say, okay, buyer, you can now finance your own agent's commission into your loan, they won't let you do that on VA because VA will not allow the buyer to bring money into the transaction for any reason. So they're not going to allow the VA buyer to bring in money for their own to pay their own agent's commission. So how's that going to work? So that would, that's not going to work at all. That would have to be another huge exception that VA would have to make. And is that happening? No, not likely. So now you potentially have to negotiate your own commission and say, well, this buyer is willing to do it for 1%. A 1% buyer agent commission. Oh my goodness. But, you either beat that out, or are you willing to beat that out, or you're not. But you've got people who are more willing to negotiate your payment on the buy side. That's how I'm seeing this going down. And it's not to say that it's the end of, and that, buyer agents are now going to work for piddly pennies because of this, because or that buyers are going to work with the listing agent directly and just skip a buyer's agent. Like, why have the buyer's agent then? Just go to the listing agent. Well, they've always been able to go to the listing agent. They always had that option. So then why did they go and get their own agent if they always had that option? Because there is that value in their own buyer's agent. There is the value in the representation of your own agent representing you, your own interests, and as well as having somebody with the expertise, somebody who is in your court, who's rooting for you, who's looking out for stuff and telling you about it. Hey, be careful. So a guide as well, that is very valuable to a lot of people to have. So buyer agents aren't going away. This lawsuit does not take away a buyer agent, nor does it diminish the value of one. It simply gives buyers more control and the ability to, or the push to pay for their own agents by telling sellers it's okay that you're not paying a buyer agent. And by doing that, by removing the compensation, or that compensation to a buyer agent is even a thing, is even happening in the MLS. One thing that I'm unclear on is, how is removing the compensation field from the MLS going to fix or do what they're trying to do, which is decouple the commission? Because it's not necessarily saying, hey, you can't pay a buyer agent, or telling buyers that you are responsible for paying your own agent. It's just saying that we're disincentivizing sellers from feeling that they have to pay an agent by removing that field. Great, good on you. I mean, I don't know that this is going to change the mind or the culture of sellers paying for both agents. Maybe over time. I feel like you need more of an impetus than just this to push people over to saying, okay, now everybody's responsible for their own agent. That's it. End of story. That's not what happened here. You still, as the seller, have the ability to pay your a buyer's agent. It's just now you have it's like a whisper price. When you're buying commercial property, you just have to call the agent. What's your whisper price? What's your, what are you willing to offer a buyer's agent? Are you willing to offer a buyer's agent? And again, you don't have to. That's what the point of this is, but I feel that it's, if this is going to change in anything, if this is going to change things to push for buyers to pay their own agents, it's going to be slow. It's going to be a slow change. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not like suddenly, oh, people, agents aren't getting paid anything because all agents are competing with each other to outbid to offer the lowest compensation amount. just to get a client. Again, they had the ability to do this all along. You had the ability to negotiate your compensation all along. It's just now it's making it a bit more obvious. So yeah, I'm sure we will see more commission negotiation with buyer agents, but it's not going to be the free for all that you think it is. Moving away from the effects of the settlement itself to more specifically NAR and the future of NAR, I mean, I've been watching the same stuff as you, like Kenny Parcell, and I'm like, oh my God. And then Tracy Casper, and then she quit because she got blackmailed. And everybody's talking about like how, that's just so awful for somebody to involve her personal life that she has to step down. And I'm just thinking like, wait, like, why did she have to step down? Like, let's talk about like the thing that like made her step down that was just so bad that she couldn't run anymore. Like, I felt like that was worth, just mentioning. Just a quick mention, an aside. But aside from that, you've got the who's the new Nikita, the new CEO or president of NAR, or the public face or whatever, who's barely made an appearance, who's made some weird videos that people have critiqued, and it's just very, you can see NAR is out of touch. It's just a bunch of boomers. It's just a bunch of old white people. I'm sorry. It's that old generation of out of touch people that are playing by real estate rules from like 40 years ago, and it's just not that time anymore. And there's an update that's expected. There is accountability, there's responsibility that is expected by the public. And so I don't know about any of the other lawsuits that are out there and pending and what those could potentially do. I have you heard that NAR ran out of money like for their insurance, and their insurance is not reinstating or renewing their policy. And that was like news like a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if anything has changed since then because they got to settle. Like they've got no money left, and so there's talk about like, okay, if you want to continue to be a member of NAR, what is that going to do to your dues next year? Like, how, are they going to increase your dues? Like probably, and if so, by how much? To be able to pay for all that just to continue to be a member of NAR. Do you want to continue to be a member of NAR? Like here in Colorado Springs, like I don't think you can be in the multiple listing service without being a member of NAR. Like I think many offices had a requirement as well that you had to be a member of NAR in addition to having your license. And if you had to be a member of NAR just to get access to the MLS. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're in the Springs or in Denver and you know the facts, let me know. But otherwise, yeah, it's just you can't not be an NAR or on the MLS without being an NAR member for Pikes Peak MLS or Denver MLS. Pueblo might be different. So, would it be possible to, if one were so inclined, to not be a member of NAR, but still have easy access to all of the data that you would get from, PPAR, essentially, here is what we have, Pikes Peak Association of Realtors, which has the Pikes Peak MLS, the PPMLS. And you've got a new contender. You've got Homes.com, which is, I mean, if you saw, they had ads that they were running during the Super Bowl. And they've got amassed quite a following of people who use Homes.com as a search tool to find homes. Obviously, Zillow, Trulia, and I think Realtor.com, those are the big ones that most people are searching for. That when they're looking for homes, they're searching on those platforms. But homes.com is very agent friendly, where you've got your professional account and you can send homes to people, and it's got your info like when they go and look up the home. Like, so I think you can track people, they can set up an account, and so it makes it really easy if you don't already have that like on your own website, like an IDX, for people to create an account. Even if you do, homes.com is a more publicly accessible one that some people may feel more, okay with using. But anyway, homes.com, along with, a lot of those other popular sites, are syndicating the feeds from the likes of Pikes Peak MLS and Denver MLS and all these other MLSs. So you could potentially get all of the info that you need to get on there because MLS is all just hand entry. When you enter a listing, you enter it all. Some of it is auto-filled, but a lot of it you enter in by hand. And a lot of that information, you're not suddenly an expert on the house. You looked it up the same way I'm going to look it up, which is to go on the El Paso County Assessor, look it up on Realist, pull the permits, do what you need to do to find out all the information to be able to as accurately input it into the MLS as possible. I don't necessarily need to have the raw data from the MLS in order to do my job as a real estate agent. It's really nice to have to be able to talk numbers with people and to be able to compare that data historically. The MLS is great for that. But I don't necessarily need that to do my job. And so if you're concerned about money, especially with NAR expenses, dues likely increasing as a result of this settlement, then that may be something to consider. One thing I want to leave you with as you have gotten all of this information, and hopefully this has mellowed you out in terms of, and there's no need to be upset about this settlement that's happening as a real estate agent. I mean, yes, it can potentially lower your income if you're just working on the buyer agent side from July on out. That may happen indeed. But it's not going to kill your job. And if you continue to work your sphere, as all these different coaches and gurus and books will tell you, is that you have to work your network, spend time, calls, notes, and pop buys, like Brian Buffini says. Make sure that you're getting enough touches. I think, one person said 42, 46, 48 touches a year, per person in the form of, yeah, calls, notes, pop-bys, emails, flyers, social media posts, online advertisements, just in-person, coffees. All of these different things add up to them seeing you and your name and what you do. And remember, it's all about getting people to know, like, and trust you. So you've got to develop that relationship. Remember, this is for the long game here. Playing the short game, paying for leads, that does work for some people, but for some people, you're spending a lot of money to get these leads, and the output is not what you thought it was going to be, and you waste a lot of money doing that. So the cheaper way to do it is to spend time with people that you do know already. And like from example, me, the neighborhood that I live in is 1,300 homes, and I door knock as much as possible, and I have community events that I do in my neighborhood, but have been trying to meet as many of my neighbors as possible and then continue to stay in touch with them. I have gotten a buyer sale and a listing sale out of this from last year. And then from doing YouTube videos like this, I did them more often now, less so now, but I got to get back into it. There's 10, 20, 30-minute videos where I would just go over the data. Average median sales price in Colorado Springs. How many months of inventory? And I would just go over all of that. So boring stuff for a lot of people. But I got two buyer clients out of my YouTube videos from doing that. So I can attest, like, it does work. I'm not like the person going like, oh, like, I have a team and I coach real estate agents now. I do like 60 deals a month. Like, no, I'm not at all like a big wig, like nothing. Like, I'm not somebody to look up to. But I've done it. I've gotten successful closings from online social media. I know that it works. So that's another touch, with people that know, like, and trust. So it's a long-term game. Don't call it a game. It's long-term relationships that you're building with people so that when they think of, oh, this big life change happened, now I got to sell my house. Who am I talking to? Kevin, obviously. that's you, and so I've got a listing potentially coming up next month with for that very thing has happened. So with doing these monthly events and staying in touch with my neighbors, I've got a couple that's looking to sell their house in my neighborhood pending a job acceptance, this the wife getting a job. And so then they'll use me. And that's again a direct result from having a network that I'm continually staying in touch with. And that's what you need to have. And I would recommend that you stay in touch with people who own homes. Listings, that's what you're going to get. Like you can stay in touch with people who are interested in buying, but I would say put your focus on homeowners, especially now in this climate with the settlement, because if you are going to be making potentially less money as a buyer's agent, don't shoot yourself in the foot. We already talked about that you have much less grunt work involved as the listing agent, so just focus on that. You feel uncomfortable with doing a listing, an hour long script essentially with somebody at their kitchen table, like, well, start practicing that stuff. Do it every day. Do it twice a day. Like, because you're not gonna, that's the only way you're gonna get good at it is by practicing it every day. Do 5 minutes a day. Like, don't commit to the whole hour. Just like commit to just doing 5 minutes out of the script because something is better than nothing. And having the consistency of doing that every day is going to make it so that you show up. I can show up for 5 minutes. Yeah. Like I'm not going to memorize the whole script or say the whole script. It's fine. I got 5 minutes. The committing to it, doing that every day, now it's going to be a lot easier to like, oh, I got 10 minutes today. So don't worry about the lawsuit and certainly don't express that or spread that worry or fear to your network or the people around you. Don't go on social media and start posting about, oh, this is the end of the world. This is so awful. How dare NAR do this and this and that? Like, don't do any of that. Why would you do that? Don't tarnish your own profession. Like you're a professional, right? This is a valid way to make money. This is a valid career, yes. So don't blow this out of proportion, especially now that you've watched this with the people that you know. Keep it calm, keep it professional, and just stick to the facts if you're going to talk about them at all. Again, a lot of the people in your network don't know about any of this. Like, I think 80% of the population has heard about, let's say, they've heard about the NAR lawsuit. They don't even know what that means. They don't know anything other than the words NAR lawsuit. That's literally all they know. They're not even thinking about it. That's most people. So it's not any of your business or concern to, oh, what are they doing over there? What do they think about it? They're not thinking about it. You don't even have to talk about it for the most part. Just let it slide because they're going to forget about it and go on to something else. Like, yeah, this is 2024. This is a presidential election year. Do you think anybody is ultimately going to think about what NAR did when it comes down to Biden and Trump? Like, no, like, there's so much more going on in 2024. Like, the NAR lawsuit is just a drop in the bucket. So take, have that perspective first. And then secondly, you're welcome to talk about the NAR lawsuit. I still have people, clients, and then people in the industry who have asked me, like, what does this mean? And I had to process it and understand it. It was still fresh to me. It was fresh to everybody. And so I was relying on people that I was following on social media platforms to say, this is what this means. This is what you're going to do about it, or what you should do about it. And then I could make my own decision. I didn't have to necessarily go along with what someone else's interpretation was, but to get like five or six interpretations all saying about the same thing made me feel confident in this is the direction that we're going. This is what the settlement from the lawsuit means. This is what it means to be a real estate agent going forward. And this is when this is going to take effect. This is what I should or should not do to prepare. You don't have to do anything. CTM is going to update the contracts and you're going to have the revised whatever in there. Again, you're going to have a quick class from your office or a title company that had a real estate attorney come in to do an hour long conversation, and you get free bagels. Woohoo! and you get to talk about, or you get to listen and hear, this is what this means, and don't be alarmed. Like, yeah, I could have told you that, but I've been following it, so now I am telling you it, and you can hear a perspective that is not doom and gloom and is not negativity and drama. It is, hey, like this is your job as a real estate agent is as a self-employed salesperson, and you're used to the change. You're used to easy come, easy go. Like, oh, almost got that paycheck, and then, the last week of the transaction or the last day, yep, and here's, what happened, and then you lost the sale. And how many times has that happened? So you're used to disappointment. There are people online, and I've come across them personally, who are excited about this. They're like, yes, I'm so glad that real estate agents, like, I just see them like freaking out, and it fills me with such joy, them trying to defend themselves and their commissions and their value to their clients. And I'm like, I don't. I don't see it that way, and not everybody does. Like, for those people, by the way, those are trolls, and you don't need to work with them. Like, you see those people posting stuff on your social media, they're not your client. You don't need to work with them. You shouldn't work with that, but they don't want to work with you. And you're not going to get everybody, right? This is a numbers game. You talk to 100 people, one out of 100 might want to buy or sell a house. It's just any sales job. So you're going to run into those people that really don't like you. I mean, let's face it, you're a real estate agent. That's kind of one of the stereotypes is that it's a job for untrustworthy people. And so are you going to just go, oh, it sucks? Are you just going to prove them wrong? Because I've got clients that I work with and still talk to, past clients that think I'm the bee's knees. They think I'm great. And they wrote me rave reviews. Like, they love me. They love their house. And I've never heard anything out of their mouths about any stereotype of how they felt real estate agents were less than, or that they were evil, or they were out to get you, they were going to swindle you. So this is, yes, it's an idea or a stereotype that exists within the world, but it doesn't exist with everybody. That's a smaller group of people who are jaded against real estate agents, and they may have every right to be. Could have had some bad experiences. There's some bad agents out there, but you're not one of them. Why? Because you're watching this video. You came here because you cared enough to see how is this going to affect me rather than, oh, I'm just going to wake up and do my job, say whatever I need to get the sale. Like, you wouldn't be sitting here watching this if you were that person. So obviously you have some moral standard, you have some ethics, you care about providing value and service to your clients. That's why you're watching this. The way that you need to be framing this lawsuit or this settlement, if you happen to cover it at all, because if you're talking to your clients, if you're on social media or if you're on the phone, in person, texting, there should always be an element of real estate within your conversation. That should always be a general conversation that gets continuously brought up. How's the market? That should just be a general question that people are asking you all the time. Or you just talk about your job and then they ask you the question, how's the market? So your focus should be on real estate related matters and whether it's a good time to sell or if it's a good time to buy, because they're wanting to know that for the future and they're wanting to hear that from you and to know that you are the expert, right? So as you're talking to them about all of this, you're doing all that online too, I hope. You should be posting social media content, ideally with your face, with you directly talking to people, because that's what people want to see on social media. They want authenticity, just like this lawsuit. They want to see people face to face and to get a an authentic response, a genuine, heartfelt response from somebody on how they feel. They could just go on a rant and that gets millions of views online, and it's because they put themselves out there. And so that's what you're doing ideally on social media, is talking about the basics again and again and again. Like these are the home costs. When you're buying a home, these are the associated costs that you need to be concerned about. Here's the top things that you need to be concerned about when you're selling your house. You know, how do you know what to price your house for? These are the kinds of content that you should be posting as the basic, simple stuff that you think everybody knows. Nobody knows it. That's the content that you should be posting. So if you want to cover the NAR lawsuit settlement stuff too, sure. I mean, it's not directly helpful to a seller other than to say, "Hey, does that mean I sell my house for less?" But if you have a good relationship with clients, with friends, neighbors, family, they're likely going to be asking you those questions from a genuine interest rather than, "Oh, I'm going to save money now. I'm going to screw over the real estate agent." The people that you want to work with are not the people that are looking to screw you over and to try to get free services out of you. You don't want to work with those people. You can spot a selfish user, a vampire, pretty quickly. So the people that are going to be willing to compensate you for your time and see the value in you, those are obviously the people that you want to be working with, right? Those are the people who are going to ask you about those things. But if you decide that you want to talk about it online, be very positive with that. Just tell them, hey, this is what happened and this is what the change means. My job, I posted that. If you want to go and look at past stuff that I've posted on my social media, I've done that on my personal and my business pages on different social media. Like this, I'm still here. I'm still a real estate agent. I still have my license. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still representing both buyers and sellers. Here are the things that have changed in the real estate industry, but overall, the real estate industry is here to stay. Real estate agents are here to stay, and the way the buyer agents get paid is going to change. Those are the basic bullet points, and you can expand upon that, add other information if you like, but that's how I would recommend that you address or talk about that if you're going to be on social media or even in person talking to somebody who's asking you about this is same stuff that I've told you is you can now tell them, and you can tell them until you see their eyes glaze over and they're like, well, that's more information that I didn't actually care that much, Kevin. I've seen that, I've made that mistake. So for most people, it's really, figure out like a 60-second blip, an elevator pitch on all of this information. Maybe I'll just post it in the description down below, like use this general script and then just modify it of this is basically the script. These are the words. This is the general intent that you want to give to somebody when they ask about what's going on with the settlement because it doesn't nobody any good to spread disinformation or lies or exaggeration about agents going away or commissions going away or commissions being severely reduced. Like, yeah, maybe, but again, like people have had the ability to negotiate their own agents' commissions this whole time. So what exactly has changed that is going to be the impetus for people to suddenly go, oh, you're going to work for me for nothing or the next to, and I'm just going to buy a house that way. Ha ha ha. Ha. I don't see that happening at all. So this is where we are. These are the results of the lawsuit and how it's going to affect the real estate industry going forward. Summary is be a listing agent. Go out there and provide value to more homeowners, as many as you can, over people who are thinking of buying. I mean, obviously, spend time with rich people, right? Because they have the houses. So just bottom line, stay in touch with your network, with people that you do know. Feel free to get in touch with more people, expand and grow your network. That's going to help you as well. So door knocking, cold calling, um, trying to meet new people from your own network. Like, hey, who do you know that might be looking to buy or sell real estate here? And just ask your people that when you're on the phone with them. You should be calling the people that are most likely to work with you, maybe 4 times a year, every few months, and just check in with them on top of all the other touches that you should be doing. But that's one of the questions that you should be asking them is who do you know? Not not a yes or no question, not do you know anyone, but who do you know who is looking to buy or sell? real estate because now they're forced to think about who do you know, not the yes or no question. Hope that helps answer all of your questions about the NAR settlement and what that means for you. If you have any further questions or commentary about this, feel free, please drop a comment below, and I'm happy to respond to any of those and keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.